Introducing Apple Vision Pro.
Apple is now the world's most valuable publicly traded company.
Apple has become the first company in U.S. history to hit $2 trillion market cap.
I mean, it really is history.
Apple. When we talk about the story of Apple, who do you think of? For most, Steve Jobs takes center stage. But there is more.
Today, we're introducing iPhone.
The visionary, the innovator, and one of the greatest tech revolutionaries of all time. His story is well known and widely covered. In films, documentaries, books, shows, video games, theater, he even has an opera devoted to him. And rightly so, under his leadership, Apple sustained a meteoric rise to power.
iPhone,
iPod, iPad, iMac.
Groundbreaking successes, one after another. But while the Apple story has been told time and time again with Jobs in the limelight, another figure fades to the background. Constantly overlooked, but every bit as brilliant, if not more. Apple's other co-founder, Steve Wozniak. You may not recognize his face, but Apple wouldn't exist without him. In the early years, he was paramount to the company's success and the computer revolution. While Steve Jobs is lauded as a marketing genius, Wozniak is often mentioned as a footnote, if at all. Was Wozniak just Steve Jobs' sidekick, an overrated IT nerd? Or was it really Wozniak that lit the match that set the computing world ablaze? And what is he doing today? It's the second half of the 20th century and things are changing fast. Nothing is changing more than computers. At the time, a computer will cost you somewhere in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. They are so expensive that only scientists and mathematicians can afford to use them. And the computers are so huge, they take up entire rooms. Take for example the UNIVAC. Developed in 1951, it was the world's first commercial computer. It was also the first computer to predict the result of a presidential vote. In 1952, it predicted Eisenhower would beat Adlai Stevenson. This was extremely controversial as Stevenson was the favorite to win. People thought it was broken. To the disbelief of all, the UNIVAC was proven right. Eisenhower won by a landslide. It weighed 7 tons and sold for $1.5 million, all for a computer less powerful than your phone. Although the technology is in its infancy, businessmen and scientists proudly predict that soon computers would be able to do almost anything.
You get all the information he needs for his everyday life, like bank statements, his theater reservations, all the information you need living in a complex modern society.
And it's a prophecy that troubles the everyday person.
The purpose of this machine, of course, is to free the worker.
Sense, though, that many of us have who really don't understand how computers work or what they do for us or to us, that we are becoming controlled by the computers. Any danger of that happening?
While some fear change, others crave it. Some truly believe that advancements in computers could galvanize positive change and usher in a new golden age for humanity. No one believes it more than Steve Wozniak. On 5th of March 1975, a small group of hobbyists called the Homebrew Computer Club have their first meeting in a very iconic place. Hobbyists are the fringe community interested in computers, and they long for the day that everyone can have their own personal computer. They are called the Homebrew Computer Club, and where are they meeting? A garage. Where else? In their meeting, they talk about how the world of computers is developing, and they are especially excited about microprocessors, a recent invention now being sold by Intel. I won't bore you with the details. Let's just say that microprocessors are the 20th century equivalent of discovering fire. With this new innovation, Suddenly, computers could be smaller, far more powerful, and drastically cheaper. The end result? The lofty dream held by every hobbyist, including Steve Wozniak, one where every person could have their own computer. They expected it to be possible in 10, maybe 20 years. Suddenly, with microprocessors, this dream became possible, seemingly overnight, and the invention starts a high-stakes race to make the first personal computer. Before we continue, I would like to invite you to join the most ambitious group of friends online. If you want to build multiple online income streams, Giga University is for you. You can subscribe to our free newsletter that will deliver strategies on how to build online income straight to your inbox. But if you are really serious about your career and your net worth, you can now join Giga University for $1 for 1 week. Unlock 20 courses on how people build income online that actually work in 2023, instead of listening to outdated advice on making money with affiliate marketing or dropshipping or other outdated methods. Our Giga University team is doing daily research to uncover what methods for building income work right now, be it micro private equity, building OnlyFans agencies, or building video editing agencies powered by recent development with AI. And if you need advice on your career, want to brainstorm business ideas, or just want to chat with friends, our community and professors in the Discord are always there for you. Try it now for $1 for 1 week, and if you don't like it, you can always cancel and you will not be charged the annual membership fee. On the advice of a friend, Wozniak reluctantly attends the meeting. Feeling incredibly shy, he says nothing the entire time, but he listens carefully. Microprocessors, he learns, are going to change everything.
I wanted a computer my whole life. That was my big thing in life. But I could never get even near enough to actually toggle the switches and put my own program in. And all of a sudden I just realized, hey, microprocessors, all of a sudden it's affordable.
After the meeting, he rushes home and that same night starts designing his very own computer. I should probably mention at this point that Wozniak has all the hallmark traits of a genius.
Sometimes my genius, it generates gravity.
From a young age, Woz is hooked on electronics. His father, Francis Wozniak, is an engineer, and the family house is always filled with little electronic gadgets. Young Wozniak grows up around electronics, always finding little pieces of copper wire and transistors here and there. So, he ends up asking his father a lot of questions, like how does a light bulb work? And his father would always answer. In 4th grade, Woz receives an electronics kit as a Christmas present, describing it as the most amazing gift, and he plays with it obsessively, learning how to use switches and circuits. Woz's father not only recognizes his potential, but actively nurtures it, teaching him at home, introducing him to the most complicated concepts in electrical engineering. And as a result, Woz's ability grows at an astonishing rate.
Now, in 8th grade, I took a science fair another step further. I took hundreds of these little transistors and put them on a little board, a little tighter, and made binary adder.
What his machine does is pretty simple. You put in 2 numbers and it adds or subtracts them to get an answer. But the making behind it, a working machine filled with switches and lights that could actually do it, was a marvel, especially for a boy of his age.
Pretty slow and awkward, but isn't it neat that for the first time in history you could ever imagine building a device that can actually calculate like this?
He's awarded the highest award for electronics by the Air Force, and they give him a tour of the local airbase and fly him in a jet. It's the first time he's ever flown. As the jet breaks through the clouds, he sees firsthand how high electronics had taken him and how much higher it still could. And indeed, this was just the beginning of his journey. Unfortunately for Wozniak, he also has another typical trait of a boy genius. He's terribly shy. As far back as he can remember, Wozniak has always been naturally shy, but it gets particularly worse in high school. With puberty, everything changes.
This was a time when a lot of students start flirting and engaging in all kinds of small talk that I didn't relate to. My natural shyness just made me bottom out in 6th grade. Socially, I went straight to the bottom.
And as a result, he turns inward. devoting himself to electronics. To unwind, 1970s kids play baseball or cowboy and Indian, not Wozniak. For fun, he gathers computer manuals and redesigns them.
So somehow during high school, as I said, I was academically lucky. There were no classes on computers, there were no computers. I taught myself from little materials I'd stumbled onto, taught myself on paper and pencil, only paper and pencil, how to design computers, and took those thousands of hours. They say it takes 10,000 hours to get good at something. Every weekend I shut my door and just worked, and I taught myself, in essence, writing the book.
And he does it for years, always managing to find ways to make the computers faster, cheaper, better.
I grew up so advanced in electronics and computers that I couldn't afford anything, had no money, but I could design any computer there was in the world in just a couple of days. And I just did it for fun. It was a hobby.
Truly the mark of a genius. By this point, he is vastly more advanced than his schoolmates, and sometimes he uses it for mischief. Wozniak loves to prank people, maybe as an outlet to let out the frustration of being an outcast, or just for childish fun. And sometimes he goes a bit too far. In high school, Woz built a police siren for his driving class and blares it when the other children drive. Later, he gets the idea to build a fake bomb.
You serious?
It's just a couple of batteries and a metronome taped together, but it's certainly convincing. On a normal school day, he leaves it in a friend's locker, and by the end of the day, he's sent to a night in juvie. He spends the night in a cold cell. Imagine this geeky kid surrounded by hardened criminals. He doesn't break into sobs nor cries out for his mommy. In fact, he notices the ceiling fan in the cell and gets an idea. He teaches the others in the cell that if they get the wires of the fan and connect them to the steel bars, they can shock the jailer when he tried to open the cell. But it's Steve Wozniak's next moves that will shock everyone. It's the night after the Homebrew Computer Club meeting, and Wozniak is about to lay the foundation for today's most valuable company in the world. Wozniak puts pen to paper like a man possessed, frantically scribbling his computer design.
I love this quote, if you listen. Page 18, word by word. I wanted to put chips together like an artist, better than anyone else could, and in a way that would be the absolute most usable by humans.
Wozniak's design is about to change everything. During the club meeting, they discussed one of the first computers using a microprocessor, the Altair 8800. It isn't a computer like the ones today. It has no keyboard, no screen. All it has is a panel with switches and lights, which you'd have to interact with to get it to do something. It costs $400, making it one of the more affordable computers at the time, but you'd have to spend a lot more to get it to do anything useful. What drives Wozniak that night is that he knows he can improve on the Altair. In fact, this computer, the one championed as the next big thing, well, Wozniak has pretty much built one already. 5 years earlier. It was called the cream soda computer, named after the cream sodas he drank building it. It ends up being the way he meets Steve Jobs for the first time.
And Steve was a leader. He was always trying to be one of those special few people in the world, the few that take the steps forward. And, you know, a Newton, he spoke of Newton and Shakespeare and things like that. And I know that he really wanted to be one of those people, but he wanted to find formulas to find a company and sell things. So every time I designed something really cute, Steve would come by and say, I know how we can sell it.
The cream soda computer was simple, but it did the job, and Woz has been looking to improve on it ever since.
Because I had come up through schooling where there was nothing about electronics, nothing about computers in the schools, and I fell in love with it. It was my passion, and I had to teach myself. I had to write my own books, and I started designing computer after computer after computer, and I said, how can I be smarter? How can I make it better?
Redesigning computers on paper for years, building Pong and creating Breakout for Atari, working for HP, Wozniak has the perfect resume for the job. All he needed was for technology to catch up, and with the advent of microprocessors, it finally has. It takes a whole year, but he does it. He finishes his new computer.
We thought we were way ahead of the rest of the world. What I was doing around that time was not even thinking about what are the right steps to take to have a very large successful company or a large successful product. It was just I had been working my whole life to build a certain type of computer for myself, and I just built the best one that was doable in that day with the particular components available, etc.
Wozniak never intended to profit off his creation. All he wants is to show it to the Homebrew Computer Club. He gives out the schematic for free, so that others can build their own computers. Steve Jobs is the one that convinces him to try sell his invention. He tells Wozniak,
"Even if we lose our money, we'll have a company. For once in our lives, we'll have a company."
So they form Apple. Tiny problem: they are both broke. To fund the new company, Jobs sells his Volkswagen van and Wozniak sells his prized possession, his HP calculator. They decide to name the computer the Apple I. Apple starts slow as they sell a computer here and there. Their biggest triumph is when a local computer store catering to hobbyists orders about 100 Apple I's. With a little cash in their pockets, the realization begins to dawn on Jobs and Woz. They were onto something huge. Sensing the untapped potential, Woz leaves HP to work at Apple full-time. Apple also secures some venture capital funding, $250,000. If you want to know more about this venture capital funding, feel free to check out our documentary on Sequoia, the company that determines our future. Personal computers were shaping up to be a highly lucrative industry and Apple was at the forefront. There's only one problem: they've got competition. Big established companies start paying attention and some begin plotting a dangerous takeover. In 1977, Apple begins to face stiff competition. That year, Radio Shack released their TRS-80. Commodore released their PET computer in 1977. Both have functionality far better than the Apple I, and the PET would be described as the world's first personal computer. Meanwhile, Wozniak works on the Apple I's successor, and at the 1977 West Coast Computer Fair, he unveils it, the Apple II.
If your invoices don't go out on time, if your stock isn't under control, and if your bookkeeping is as complicated as War and Peace, you need an Apple.
The Apple II marks a new era for computers. All computers before the Apple II, including the Apple I, were sold as computer kits. They needed the buyer to build the computer. For that reason, computers never really appealed to the general public, as you needed an engineering degree to put the things together. For the first time, the Apple II is a computer that's sold 100% working. It's simple, elegant, and easy to use. Instead of those daunting metal monoliths of the 1960s, the computer finally has a friendly face.
And then we had the Apple II, which we knew was 10 times the computer. That was color, that was graphics, it was games, it was really everything.
The Apple II has everything going for it, and it goes on to be a stratospheric success. In 1980, the Apple II brings in a whopping $180 million in revenue. That same year, Steve and Woz decide to take the company public. This proves to be a defining moment for the founders of the company. Leading up to the company IPO, a lot of engineers in Apple didn't have access to stock options like executives. So while management and venture capitalists are about to reap huge rewards, those actually working on the computers will end up getting nada. Wozniak notices this and does something that stuns the company.
I came from Hewlett-Packard and they had profit sharing. Every quarter, a certain amount of the profit was given to the employees as stock, because you as an employee should feel like an owner of your company. And I felt that so strongly, so I gave away a lot of my own stock to almost everybody in the company in marketing, engineering jobs, a certain level of job. And then I gave huge amounts to a few key people, young people that were in high school that helped enthuse me and helped write code with me in the early days. Wouldn't have gotten to where I got to without them. And I felt they deserved a part of it too. They shouldn't be treated like they aren't worth anything.
Steve Jobs, meanwhile, doesn't give away a single share, not even to one of Apple's earliest employees and one of his best friends, Daniel Kottke. This isn't the first time that money illustrates the difference between the two Apple founders. In 1973, before Apple, Jobs worked for Atari. Atari commissioned Jobs and Woz to do a project for them, and they paid Jobs $5,000 for it. Jobs lies to Woz, saying he only received $700 and gives Woz half, cheating him out of more than $2,000. And it's not the last time the founders would butt heads. The Apple II becomes the crown jewel of the company, and they end up making numerous iterations, going on to make the Apple II Plus, the Apple IIe, and the Apple II GS. The series of Apple IIs becomes the company's lifeline as Steve Jobs attempts to develop his own line of computers, the Apple III. That fails miserably, the Lisa, that fails miserably, and the Macintosh, which surprisingly also fails miserably. Another dividing moment for the founders comes in the 1985 annual meeting for the company. At this point, the Apple II accounts for 85% of sales, and yet neither it nor its team is mentioned once in the meeting. Steve Jobs thinks that the company has to look forward to the future instead of dwindling on the past. This angers Wozniak, who feels that the team is robbed of the recognition it deserved, especially when
this product was the only source of profits for Apple for the first 10 years of the company.
At this point, Wozniak has had enough. Till now, he has worked for Apple full-time for 8 years and says it was the bane of his existence. He grows to hate Apple, saying the company has gone in the wrong direction for the last 5 years, and he personally has been acting more and more as a manager instead of doing what he enjoys, being an engineer.
Everywhere I go now, I go to business meetings and presentations, and they're all sitting there in three-piece suits. It's a large business, there's a lot of dollars involved. The people who have come out of school trained to run and manage business is the key element today, and that's where most of the creativity is going.
Woz realizes that Apple has grown to the point that it no longer needs him. Neither does the personal computer revolution. So he does the unthinkable.
I'm leaving, Steve.
He leaves. Wozniak leaves Apple a multi-millionaire in his 30s, and he decides to spend the rest of his life doing what he loves. He still tinkers with tech. Woz goes on to invent the universal remote control and help develop GPS technology and telecommunications. For his contribution to technology, he's been awarded 10 honorary degrees in computer science by various universities and a buttload of other significant awards. He actively remains an influential voice in the industry, even voicing his anger against Apple for not allowing people to repair their own devices.
Anyway, it's time to recognize the right to repair more fully. I believe that companies inhibit it because it gives the companies power, control, over everything. And I guess in a lot of people's minds, power over others equates to money and profits. Hey, is it your computer or is it some company's computer? Think about that. It's time to start doing the right things.
Another pet passion of his, education, will sharpen into focus later in life. He goes on to personally teach primary and high school computer classes for 8 years and founds WozU, which assists schools and universities with technical education. Overcoming his shyness in a big way, he's cameoed in TV shows like Dancing with the Stars, Big Bang Theory, and Unicorn Hunters, a knockoff of Shark Tank. To this day, Steve Wozniak still lives in California, albeit in a much bigger house. He's married with 3 kids. If you ever get the time to listen to Steve Wozniak speak, please do. The first thing you'll pick up is that he's a fast talker, and if the topic's technology, you might just catch the glint in his eyes, a glint he's had all his life, a glint that shows, even at his age, that when it comes to technology, Wozniak still has the same wide-eyed, childlike wonder he's always had, reflecting how he still firmly believes to this day that through improving technology we can make people's life and the world that much better.
I'd been successful, but I had never sought business success. I had never sought wealth, money, power. I had only wanted to bring great computers to people as an engineer,